If you haven't already done so, perhaps taking a moment here to close the eyes or soften the gaze as you feel comfortable doing. Reconnecting with our breath. We'll begin in a few moments, as we generally do, taking 3 deep breaths together. When we take these breaths, if you find it helpful, you can count for a few beats. Usually we do 4 or 5 beats as we breathe in and holding the breath for perhaps a count of 2 or 3, and then releasing perhaps for a little bit longer, a count of 5 or maybe even 6. Breathing in deeply through the nostrils. Holding and release. Again. Out. One final deep breath here. Releasing. Taking a moment or two here to allow our breath to find its natural pace, its natural rhythm. If it feels comfortable to us, we can continue to take those deep breaths. If it feels more natural, to shorten the breaths in and out. But giving ourselves some permission here, some softness in adjusting, and just allowing the breath to find what feels comfortable for it in this moment. Noticing the breath, the rhythm of the inhales and exhales. Noticing perhaps the sensation, the physical feeling, the texture of the breath. Noticing perhaps the temperature of the air, coolness or warmth. as we allow air in, as we allow for those few moments of holding, and as we let go of the air, perhaps the air is slightly warmer as it leaves us on the exhale. Continuing to breathe in that natural flow, not manipulating or controlling the breath in any artificial way, just noticing it. Noticing here any sounds that may accompany the breath. The sound, perhaps, as the air travels in through the nostrils or the lips. The sound, perhaps, of the air physically passing out between the lips or through the nose as we breathe out. Noticing perhaps the sounds outside of ourselves, the sounds of the space that we're in. Perhaps there's some white noise that as we breathe in and out, we're able to tune into just a little bit more than we ordinarily do. We don't need to judge it or try to categorize it, just allowing it to be and just noticing it. One of the unexpected gifts or side benefits of being in this virtually connected world of Zoom calls is that we can be a little less worried about our sounds getting out to others. So if we're muted out, we don't have to feel in any way self-conscious. We may hear our bellies rumbling with hunger or our body making all sorts of sounds as we adjust ourselves or as the breath flows in and out. And we don't have to worry about anyone else hearing it. We can just notice the sounds, the smells, even the visual sensations, perhaps the play of light, or any movement that accompanies our breathing in and out, even as we have our eyes closed or our gazes softened. Continuing to notice the breath, observing its natural pace without judgment. We can stay here, continuing to notice the breath at this pace, with this rhythm. If that feels right to us, that is absolutely fine. And if it feels comfortable or accessible to us, with intention and gentleness, we can now try to make those inhalations just a little bit more expansive, just a little bit wider, a little bit deeper. If we're able to, perhaps here we can even physically broaden out the chest a little bit, adjusting the spine, perhaps sitting up just a little bit more straight, making that spine just a little bit more erect, widening that area of the torso, that heart space, chest area, just a little bit more. Perhaps we feel a little bit of a stretch here, allowing for that expansiveness, allowing for that greater stretch, that fuller capacity of breath. If it feels accessible to us here, perhaps deepening on the exhale, elongating, breathing out with a fuller expression, imagining perhaps as we breathe out a deeper leaning into the core of who we are. Imagining perhaps a dive deeper down, deeper within than perhaps we ordinarily go. Noticing any sensations, any feelings that arise. feelings of excitement, feelings of fear, feelings of curiosity, perhaps. Continuing to breathe through whatever feelings arise, noticing the feelings, noticing the breath. As this time of meditation together arrives at its end, taking a moment here perhaps to deepen that stretch, elongate that breath, lean into that feeling of expansion and of depth just a little bit more as we take one final deep breath in and out together with intention. Closing our practice with the sacred vibration, primordial sound of Om. You're welcome to chant along with me or simply be present to the sound in whatever way feels comfortable and appropriate to you. Taking one final deep breath in together and then chanting Om on the exhale, breathing in deeply through the nose. Om. An invitation here to softly and gently open the eyes or widen the gaze, bringing our awareness back to our external surroundings, back to our meeting together. Thank you all for joining us for our weekly Shanti in Place meditation and wisdom reflection. Today, I'd like to offer an exploration or reflection on the idea that I hope some of us were able to connect to a little bit through the practice, but the idea of connecting to our own expansive and deep nature. Our reflection for today invites us to reflect on the lesson that we can learn from the ocean. When we become like the ocean, and what are the qualities of the ocean? Expansive, deep, and dynamic. When we become like the ocean, we learn to cultivate contentment and peace within. This is a beautiful idea that is found in many traditions, and in the tradition of yoga wisdom arising from ancient India, from the Hindu traditions, we find the ocean is often invoked as an analogy or as a metaphor, an image for our spiritual journey, for our spiritual life. When we think about it and when we have this experience, I hope you can see this image on the screen, the power of the ocean, the majesty of the ocean, it's so wondrous. It practically takes our breath away. If you've ever been in a situation where you've had the opportunity, perhaps standing on the shore or being in a boat or a ship, where you look out onto what seems like almost limitless water, right? This sort of this picture of the infinite that the ocean offers us. Sometimes you can look out, and of course here we see the shore and the beautiful mountain landscape, but sometimes you can look out and it seems to have no end. So there's this idea of limitlessness that's evoked. And then the depth of the ocean. So there's the expanse of the ocean, but then there's also the depth, where other bodies of water we may appreciate to some degree the depth, but when we think about the ocean, we're invited to think about practically limitless depth. There's an invitation to think about depth in a way that calls us to something that is that invokes wonder, that invokes a sense of perhaps amazement and awe, and perhaps even gratitude. We'll talk about these qualities of the ocean. It's not surprising then that this imagery of the ocean should come up in the Bhagavad-Gita. We've been looking at different verses, different passages from the Gita that offer us points of meditation or reflection. And here we have one in the second chapter that explicitly draws on the qualities of the ocean and offers the qualities of the ocean as something to aspire towards in our own yoga and meditation practice. Apuryamanam achala pratishtham samudramapaha pravisanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shantim apnoti na kama kami. Just as the ever-filled ocean remains steady and undisturbed, Sri Krishna says, although waters constantly flow into it from every side. In the same way, one who is undisturbed by the constant flow of cravings experiences real peace within, real Shanti. We talk about Shanti in place. Real Shanti in place is when one is undisturbed by the constant flow of cravings that flow in. Not one, Krishna says, who strives to fulfill the cravings. It's interesting, Krishna here uses this phrase that we've translated as one who strives to fulfill the cravings. The phrase is kama kami. Literally, it means one who desires the desires or who craves the cravings. So when we give in to the cravings, when we allow those cravings, and here we can say not just cravings in the sense of I want this or I want that, but when we allow whatever the wherever the mind tries to take us, as far as attachments and aversions, as far as cravings and desires, or perhaps even fears and anxiety, when we seek to, or when we allow ourselves to be controlled by those cravings, by those external influences, we create more and more of them. The more we give into them, the more we just perpetuate and replicate them. But when we are instead like the ocean, steady and undisturbed, when we recognize the thoughts are coming, when we recognize the anxiety is coming, when we recognize the desires, the cravings, whatever they may be, when we recognize that they flow in, but we recognize I can remain who I am. I can notice them, but I don't need to be disturbed. I don't need to lose the sense of focus on who I am. When we do that, then we're able to connect to that expansiveness. We're able to connect to that depth that is so beautifully exemplified by the ocean. What is the nature of the ocean? It's dynamic. As we heard, the waters are constantly flowing into it, right? It's still, but it's not still because it's found a way to um, to block any influence from coming to it. It's still, and it's balanced and it's stable amidst constant flow. So this is balance, this is stillness, but it's balance and stillness that is dynamic, that recognizes and experiences the flow and yet remains fixed. So it's a constant dynamic act of balancing and of stillness. And how does it do that? Well, the second quality of the ocean is its expansive nature. It's so vast, right? When we think about the vastness of the ocean and we compare it to a small puddle, for instance, the expansiveness of the ocean is what allows it to to have its power, what allows it to have its strength. In the same way, we're invited to have an expansive perspective, right? When we make our perspective small, like a little puddle, then we can only withstand the the cravings and the anxiety and the stimuli that's flowing in to a very small extent. But when we make our consciousness, when we make our perspective expansive, when we broaden it out, then we're able to withstand the effects of that which are perhaps provoking us in the short term. We can withstand the effects of the immediate because we see that bigger picture. We have that larger perspective. And of course, it all comes from depth. It's very interesting when we notice that the ocean appears to be quite tumultuous when you look at like waves crashing. But where do we see that? We see that on the surface. But then when we go deep into the ocean, as we can see in this illustration here, beyond even the ever dynamic, ever-changing waves of the ocean closer to the surface, when we dive deep within, we find a certain stillness, we find a certain stability. And so also in our own lives, when there is even when there is apparent tumult, when there's apparent activity and struggle, on the more surface level, when we're able to connect through our meditation practice, through our spiritual practices, whatever they may be, with depth, we're able to find that place of enduring stability, of enduring strength, of enduring stillness. And so an invitation here for those who like to kind of take away a reflection point or a little bit of homework to reflect on where is that dynamic balance in my own life, and where can I more intentionally cultivate it? Where am I leveraging that expansive perspective, and where would I like to be more mindful of that perspective? And what is that inner life that I'm cultivating that gives me that depth that I can travel to, that I can dive into, particularly in times where on the surface there may be a lot of tumultuousness, there may be a lot of activity, there may be a lot of pressure and stressors that are challenging my notion of stability and strength and stillness. What is that inner life that I'm cultivating, that is my deeper place to go to dive to reconnect to? Again, when we become like the ocean, expansive, deep, and dynamic, we learn to cultivate contentment and peace within. So thank you all so much. We understand if folks do need to get going, but I'm happy to stay for a few more minutes to answer any questions, or if anyone would like to share from their own experience, either in this practice or more generally. We're happy to save some time for that. Thank you, friends, for the words of affirmation in the chat box, as always. I'm constantly encouraged. And I really do invite, especially the imagery that the ocean evokes for us. It's such a beautiful point of meditation. So I invite you to hold on to this and to put it into practice in your own meditation or mindfulness practice throughout the week. So again, thank you all so much for this precious time together. And please do continue to join us if you're able to. We meet every Tuesday evening at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can join by using the same link. And this is open to the wider public. So even if you are not joining us connected to Princeton University, we're happy to have folks tune in from anywhere and everywhere they're able to. So please do feel free to share with friends and loved ones as well. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day and wonderful rest of your week, and hope to connect with you very, very soon. Take care.